Hey, it's David Breslow back here with you, and welcome to this edition of Dose of Dave. I am the founder of Performance Success Strategies and author of Wired to Win. Today, I have a rather interesting thing I'd like to share with you. It's actually based on a movie that I saw on Netflix called Flash of Genius. Now, I had never heard of this before. I just took a shot with it. It looked kind of interesting. And as I started watching it, it was based on a true story. And this fellow, inventor, Dr. Kearns, invented the intermittent windshield wiper. That's the, on your car right now, when you turn a dial a little bit, you can control the speed and the frequency of the wipers going back and forth. Well, he created that and invented it. And he had it tagged with the government and all that stuff. He had it copywritten. He had it protected by the government. And so a friend of his said worked for a particular company that got him introduced to the Ford Motor Company at that time. I believe this was in the 50s somewhere. I'm not exactly sure. So he met with Ford Motor Company and they loved the idea. They tested it. They spent a number of weeks and months. He sent them a prototype. They tested it. They used it. They found out it worked really well over time. And after about 4 or 5 or 6 months, they told him that we're just going to stop conversations and negotiations. We're just going to put an end to this. So they dropped it. Turns out 6 months later, he discovers that Ford Motor Company put intermittent windshield wipers in the new editions of their cars. And he was furious, of course, because they infringed on his patent. And everybody told him, leave it alone. His wife, his friends, his professional friends, leave it alone. You can't possibly win against a giant like Ford Motor Company. But he said no. They stole my idea. I don't care about the money. They stole my idea. So this guy decided to go to court. Took him 12 years. It sucked all of his money from him. He lost his wife, who became disinterested and disillusioned over this. He was obsessed with this. He spent so much time on this. Took about 12 years. Finally went to court. During that time, Ford Motor Company had offered him money. They started out like, I think it was $250,000, and then it went up a little bit and up a little bit just to get him to go away. And just before the trial, according to the film, they offered him $30 million to go away, and he wouldn't take it. So they're in the trial, and on top of that, he decides to be his own lawyer. He's representing himself, which is generally not a good idea. But as the movie went on, here's why I want to tell you this story. There was a point in the trial where one of the Ford engineers was in the witness stand, and he was describing that, Ford didn't steal your idea because we had these parts already. We've been using the parts that you used to come up with this invention, according to you, but we've been using those parts for years in Ford cars. And then when it was his turn to cross-examine him, he picks up a book. And here's where the brilliance is, in my opinion. He picks up a book and he says to the engineer, do you know what this book is? And the engineer says, yes, that's A Tale of Two Cities. It's a classic. And Dr. Kearns says, yes, it is. Let me read you the first 2 sentences. He opens up the book. He reads the sentences. He goes, it was the worst of times. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. And he looks at the engineer and he says, do you think the author invented the word it? And the engineer says, no. Do you think the author invented the word was? No. Did the author invent the word the? No. Best? No. He said, I could go on all day like this with you, and your answer will be no every single time. Here's what I'm trying to say to you. All this author did was rearrange what was already there. Those words already existed in the English language. All this author did was rearrange them in a way that created a classic novel. That's what inventors do. That's what I did. I didn't invent the parts that you're telling me that Ford Motor Company has been using for years in their cars. I'm not arguing that. What I'm telling you is I took those parts and I reorganized them in a way that your engineers did not. And when I organized them, I created the intermittent windshield wiper. That's it. Every inventor does that. Inventors don't create new parts generally. They create new things because they rearrange them. Boom. In my mind, that was the end of the case. When I heard that, case over. That was such a great argument. And it turns out moments later in the film, they did award him the victory. And Ford Motor Company had to admit the trademark infringement, and they had to pay him $10 million. 3 weeks later, Chrysler Corporation, which had also done the same thing, had to pay him $18 million. So this guy went 12 years into this process, lost so much in his world, but was sticking to the fact that he knew he was getting lied to. He knew that he invented this item. He knew that he'd put the things together to make it work. But the big companies, because they have lawyers and money and time, think they can get away with this kind of stuff. So he said no. But here's the message for you here today. What does what I'm saying have to do with you? Well, guess what? You have parts. Your parts are the same as everybody else's. It's true. A mind, a body, emotions, and energy. Those are the 4 parts that every human being has to navigate this thing we call life. And this is what I like to teach in the Empowered Individual program. We all have these tools. I call them power tools. We have a mind. We have a body. We have emotions. We have energy. Those are the only tools we need. Those are the only tools you need to navigate this thing called life. Now, here's the crux of the message. If you started to reorganize those tools, you would have a different life experience. What does that mean? Well, right now, if your life is not what you want it to be, or if you are not making as much money as you want, you don't have the relationships you want, or you're starting a new business and it's struggling a little bit, and whatever the arena is in your life, whatever's going on, you have these power tools that you're using constantly. They're part of the process. But if you start reorganizing them, maybe you're too much in your head. Are you using your head more than your emotions and your body and your energy? Are you way too much, emotionally involved? Are emotions sucking up all the energy that you're using and you're out of balance? You see, this is what I'm talking about. If we don't rearrange our power tools, we will be out of balance. Our head or our mind will be using too much energy. Sometimes our emotions are using too much energy and they're draining us. Our body's using too much energy. If they're out of whack, they're out of sync. And that's what athletes call the zone. The zone is nothing more, in my opinion, than those 4 elements: your mind, your body, your emotions, and your energy operating in sync without any obstruction, without any obstacle. Energy is flowing smoothly through those 4 items, okay? So the point of this story is that we have the ability to rearrange and restructure how we use our 4 power tools. Take a look at how you're using them. If you're too much in your head, you want to start balancing out the mind, the body, the emotions, and the energy. If you're too much in your emotions, or your emotions are just making you be all over the place and you're unstable and you're going up and down with your feelings all the time, feeling like you're just being dragged around and getting exhausted, you're too much in the emotional side of those power tools. It's time to rearrange. So do what this guy, Dr. Kearns, did. You take those parts that were already there and just rearrange them, arrange them into a way where you feel balanced, where you feel centered, and where you feel secure. That begins just by sitting down and looking at those power tools and asking yourself, am I using one more than the other generally throughout my day? Am I relying more on my head and less on my emotions and my body and my energy? Am I relying more on my emotions? Are they running the show? And I'm not using my intellect, my head, my logic as much as I could to make better choices, and so on and so forth. So it sounds like it's a little bit involved, and I'm just scratching the surface here for you. I'm just saying this to get you to spark the match, to light the match, and just start to take a look at your power tools, your mind, your body, your emotions, and your energy, and just look at them in terms of balance and arrangement. Do you need to rearrange the balance of those 4 items? That's what I'm asking you to consider. So Dave Breslow, thank you once again for hanging out with me with this dose of Dave, and I look forward to speaking to you soon. Once again, you're always welcome to go to www.davebreslow.com at any time you wish. You'll see the free training video there for self-empowerment. You'll love it. Take a listen to it, and it'll be great if you can hang out over there for a few minutes. You will have yourself a good time. So Dave Breslow, thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll look forward to talking with you next time. Take care.